Welcome to West Film. We bring you the best movie recaps, reviews, ending explained videos, and hidden details from your favorite films. If you love great movies, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Now grab some popcorn, and let's jump into today's movie. Both actors' committed physical performances brought genuine athleticism to the action, and Wesley Snipes' martial arts background gave him a speed and precision that set Simon Phoenix apart from many movie villains of that era. That confidence became one of the defining features of the film. Demolition Man's success strengthened Snipes' position as a premier action star, and he followed it with roles in Rising Sun, Drop Zone, U.S. Marshals, and eventually Blade, which helped launch the modern comic book film era. Even before Demolition Man, audiences had recognized Snipes' talent, but this role helped bring him further into the Hollywood spotlight. Sandra Bullock's performance as Lenina Huxley brought dramatic range, boundless enthusiasm, and an innocent, determined take on a futuristic police officer, delivering both comic and dramatic beats. Structurally, the story grounds itself in the idea that Spartan and Phoenix represent opposing forces of order and violence, while Huxley serves as a bridge between the old world and the new, helping audiences explore this unfamiliar setting without the exposition feeling forced. When Demolition Man premiered in 1993, many viewers saw it simply as another big-budget science fiction action film starring Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. On the surface, it delivered everything audiences expected from an action blockbuster of the era: spectacular explosions, futuristic weapons, intense combat, and memorable one-liners, all wrapped in polished action sequences. But over time, Demolition Man has come to be recognized as one of the most surprisingly prophetic science fiction films of the 1990s, with many of its fictional details taking on new relevance as modern society has evolved. Perhaps the most talked about aspect of the film is its vision of a society obsessed with order and political correctness. In the world of 2032, violence has been nearly eliminated, crime is almost non-existent, and citizens live comfortable, closely monitored lives. A language is policed, physical contact is regulated, and only certain behaviors are deemed acceptable. When the film first came out, many audiences read these ideas as deliberately absurd, existing purely for comedic effect. Some laughed at the idea of being fined for using offensive language, treating it as pure 1990s style satire. Decades later, though, viewers have increasingly revisited the film and noticed striking parallels between its fictional society and real-world debates about speech, censorship, public behavior, and social expectations. The filmmakers never intended to predict the future with precision, but that unexpected relevance has turned Demolition Man into a movie frequently cited in conversations about political correctness, cancel culture, personal freedom, and the balance between security and liberty. Rather than offering simple answers, the film presents both extremes as flawed, leaving room for audiences across generations and political viewpoints to interpret it differently. One of the film's most famous cultural contributions is the mystery of the three seashells, introduced early in the story when John Spartan discovers that toilet paper no longer exists in the future. Without any explanation, this throwaway detail became one of the longest-running mysteries in movie history. For decades, fans have debated countless theories about how the seashells might actually work. Some suggest they're cleaning tools, others think they're voice-activated devices, while plenty of people have simply enjoyed the mystery for its own sake. Internet forums, podcasts, YouTube videos, and social media discussions have kept the joke alive for years, and the three seashells have been referenced in television shows, video games, merchandise, internet memes, and novelty products, earning a level of lasting recognition rarely achieved by props from any other science fiction film, all without ever being explained. Another memorable prediction involved the restaurant industry. In the film's future, every restaurant has been absorbed into a single brand, with Taco Bell being the only surviving franchise after the so-called franchise wars. At the time, audiences saw this as a ridiculous jab at corporate expansion, but as major brands continued consolidating and expanding globally in the following decades, the joke started to feel increasingly relevant. Interestingly, some international versions of the film replaced Taco Bell with Pizza Hut, since Taco Bell was less well known in certain countries. A quirky bit of movie history that fans have since discovered varies depending on where they watched the film. The movie also anticipated the growing role of technology in daily life. Citizens rely on automated systems, voice-controlled computers, digital communication, artificial intelligence, biometric identification, and advanced surveillance. While all of this looked futuristic in 1993, many of these concepts, say voice assistants, facial recognition, automated everyday tasks, digital payments replacing physical cash, even virtual meetings and remote communication closely resemble aspects of life today. Demolition Man obviously took creative liberties for dramatic effect, but it belongs to a select group of science fiction films whose predictions weren't focused on flying cars or impossible inventions, but rather on subtle shifts in everyday behavior, which is exactly why its predictions have aged so well. The character of Simon Phoenix also left a lasting mark on popular culture. Rather than being motivated by world domination or personal revenge, Phoenix is driven by chaos and simply enjoys destruction and entertainment. Snipes played the role with infectious energy, creating a villain who dances, laughs, and smiles while committing acts of extreme violence, a far cry from the predictable, brooding villain archetype. That combination of menace and charisma influenced later action villains, since filmmakers came to recognize that audiences often remember charismatic villains just as vividly as heroic protagonists. John Spartan similarly became an iconic action hero because he represents a kind of traditional masculinity dropped into a completely unfamiliar world. His inability to understand the future creates much of the film's comedy, letting audiences experience the strange, futuristic society through his skeptical eyes as he's forced to accept and sometimes challenge a new set of rules. This fish-out-of-water formula has since been echoed in numerous action films, television series, and other science fiction stories. The film also stands out within dystopian fiction. Unlike many dark, futuristic stories filled with ruined cities and warfare, Demolition Man presents a clean, beautiful, peaceful civilization and finds its tension there instead. One reason the film continues to resonate with audiences on repeat viewings is the sheer amount of effort put into building its futuristic world. Even though the film presents itself as a fast-paced action blockbuster, its production involved extensive planning, world building, innovative visual design, and the combined talents of artists, technicians, and stunt performers, all shaping the film during a period when numerous futuristic action films were experiencing a major resurgence, with audiences responding enthusiastically to movies blending explosive action with imaginative visions of the future. Rather than simply creating a dystopian world for its own sake, the film explores a different concept, a society that appears almost perfect on the surface, where crime has disappeared, citizens live comfortably, and technology has solved most everyday problems, but beneath that polished exterior, genuine conflict still exists. This immediately set the film apart from many other futuristic action films of the period. Instead of showing a ruined, war-torn civilization, the filmmakers created a world that looks beautiful, peaceful, and prosperous while still carrying its own unique weaknesses. This contrast between visual perfection and social rigidity became one of the film's defining features. Demolition Man marked the feature directorial debut of Marco Brambilla, who had built a reputation as a talented commercial and music video director known for strong visual instincts and striking imagery. Taking on a major studio action film as his first feature was a considerable challenge, but it gave Brandbill the opportunity to blend comedy with straightforward action filmmaking, and to bring his visual sensibility to the construction of an entirely new world. Every creative department contributed to building the future simultaneously. The bright architecture, clean environments, and calm atmosphere were designed to contrast sharply with the grittier, more chaotic look of the film's opening sequences, giving audiences an immediate visual signal that they'd crossed into a different era. Filming took place primarily in California, where the production combined existing modern architecture with specially constructed sets to create the city of San Angeles. One of the filmmaker's smartest decisions was shooting real buildings with futuristic-looking designs rather than relying entirely on expensive visual effects work. Structures featuring sleek curves, glass facades, and contemporary architecture helped make the future city believable while keeping production costs under control. Much of the filming took place around Los Angeles, Irvine, and other Southern California locations that already had modern architectural styles. Shopping centers, office complexes, public buildings, and civic spaces all became convincing stand-ins for the future simply through clever camera angles and lighting. Production designers extended this philosophy to every aspect of daily life in San Angeles. Uniforms, furniture, public transportation, restaurants, police stations, and technology all reflected a society obsessed with order. While many science fiction films overwhelm audiences with impossible inventions, Demolition Man presents its technology as a natural evolution of familiar objects: voice-controlled computers, biometric scanners, automated restaurants, and digital communication systems all felt futuristic in 1993, yet closely resembled the technology people use today. Costume design also played an essential role in establishing the film's contrasts. John Spartan's practical, rugged clothing reflects his background as a traditional police officer, while Simon Phoenix's colorful costumes reinforce his theatrical, unpredictable personality. Meanwhile, the citizens of San Angeles wear clean, carefully designed uniforms that emphasize conformity over individuality. Even without dialogue, audiences can immediately understand where a character belongs simply by observing their appearance. One of the biggest production challenges involved balancing action with comedy. Stallone was already famous for intense, straightforward action roles, while Wesley Snipes brought remarkable athletic ability and dramatic range to his performance. The filmmakers had to stage fight sequences without losing the film's satirical tone, which required extensive rehearsal and carefully coordinated choreography. Stallone performed many of his own stunts and drew on his experience from Rocky, Rambo, and Cliffhanger to bring confidence to the demanding action sequences involving explosions, firefights, and hand-to-hand combat. Snipes proved equally committed to the physical side of his performance. Already trained in several martial arts disciplines, he brought brutal speed and precision to Simon Phoenix. Multiple members of the production later praised his remarkable athleticism, flexibility, and coordination in executing complicated fight choreography. The filmmakers created action sequences that let both actors shine, giving each performer moments to stand out despite their contrasting styles. Stallone remained grounded and serious, while Snipes delivered a more energetic performance full of expressive movement. This contrast became one of the film's greatest strengths. Sandra Bullock, not yet a global superstar, played Lenina Huxley with remarkable enthusiasm, balancing intelligence, innocence, curiosity, and subtle comedy without ever becoming overly exaggerated. Her natural charm quickly impressed the filmmakers during production. On the surface, Demolition Man tells a straightforward story about a relentless police officer hunting down a dangerous criminal. But beneath that action movie premise lies a more layered narrative that blends science fiction, satire, and social commentary. The screenplay follows a familiar structure while constantly surprising audiences with unexpected twists, making the film more sophisticated than many other action movies released during the same period. The story opens on the violent streets of Los Angeles in 1996, immediately establishing a world defined by crime and destruction. This spectacular opening crisis, involving the notorious criminal Simon Phoenix, serves multiple purposes at once. It introduces the film's central characters, demonstrates the danger Phoenix poses, establishes John Spartan's fearless reputation, and delivers the kind of explosive action audiences expect from a Sylvester Stallone movie. Spartan has earned the nickname the Demolition Man for doing whatever's necessary to complete a mission, even when it means leveling buildings and city blocks in the process. Despite his effectiveness, his methods frequently leave massive destruction in their wake, making him a controversial figure within the police department and introducing one of the film's recurring themes, whether the ends justify the means. Simon Phoenix, meanwhile, is one of the film's most memorable creations, a calm, calculating villain who enjoys violence purely for its own sake, taunting his enemies and treating murder as entertainment. From the opening moments, the audience understands that this isn't simply a criminal, but a personality that's extraordinarily difficult to stop. The first major turning point comes during a confrontation in an abandoned building, where Spartan finally captures Phoenix after a destructive battle. What initially looks like a clean victory turns complicated when investigators discover that Spartan disobeyed orders during the operation, insisting hostages were dead inside the building without sufficient evidence to support that claim. The legal system responds with equally harsh punishment for both men. Phoenix receives a lengthy cryogenic prison sentence for his crimes, while Spartan is convicted of involuntary manslaughter for the deaths of the hostages he wrongly believed were already dead. This twist immediately sets Demolition Man apart from more traditional action films of the era, where audiences recognize the obvious injustice, creating sympathy for Spartan while also raising questions about responsibility, accountability, and the imperfections of the legal system. The narrative then takes its boldest structural leap. Rather than continuing directly from the events of 1996, the story jumps 36 years into the future. This dramatic skip instantly transforms the movie from a contemporary action film into a full-blown science fiction adventure. Audiences discover the world of 2032 through Spartan's perspective, making him both protagonist and audience surrogate. This fish-out-of-water structure becomes one of the screenplay's greatest strengths, because Spartan knows nothing about the future society, so every discovery feels natural as the audience learns about the futuristic setting alongside him without losing the story's momentum. The future city of San Angeles appears almost perfect, crime has virtually disappeared, streets are spotless, and technology has eliminated most inconveniences, with public safety treated as the highest priority. But the story gradually reveals the cracks beneath this seemingly perfect society. Technology and rigid social rules have combined to sharply restrict freedom of expression, to the point where even simple disagreement is treated as unacceptable. The film carefully balances admiration for this future with criticism of it, refusing to present it as either entirely positive or entirely negative. The story's major turning point occurs when Simon Phoenix is unexpectedly revived from cryogenic imprisonment, completely disrupting the peaceful future society. The authorities, trained for a world with almost no violent crime, quickly discover that modern law enforcement isn't prepared to stop someone as unpredictable and dangerous as Phoenix. Despite the future's advanced technology, Phoenix refuses to follow its rules, prompting officials to release John Spartan, who possesses the knowledge and experience needed to confront him. This dynamic strengthens the story considerably, Just as Phoenix serves as the perfect villain for Spartan, Spartan becomes the only person in this new era capable of stopping him, even though both men are essentially relics of a more violent past thrust into a future that now depends on them for its survival. As Spartan adjusts to life in 2032, the screenplay skillfully alternates between action, comedy, and world building. His confusion about the future, struggling to figure out how to eat, use a restroom, or drive a vehicle, generates many of the film's funniest moments while also giving the audience a way into this unfamiliar world. Meanwhile, Lenina Huxley represents audiences' own fascination with 20th century culture. Unlike most citizens of the future, she secretly admires the violent, adventurous era Spartan comes from and studies forbidden historical material with genuine enthusiasm, much to Spartan's frustration over how strangely the world around him has evolved. Meanwhile, Simon Phoenix exploits the weaknesses of this supposedly perfect society, quickly discovering that outsmarting future technology is actually easier than expected, since the security systems and law enforcement procedures lack the flexibility needed to respond to someone genuinely willing to break the rules, leaving Phoenix consistently one step ahead. While Demolition Man is remembered primarily for its spectacular action, memorable one-liners, and entertaining chemistry between Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes, its lasting impact comes from something deeper beneath that blockbuster exterior. The film constantly raises philosophical questions about humanity, encouraging audiences to think as much as they're entertained. This layer of storytelling is one of the main reasons the film has stayed relevant for decades. The film's central theme is the tension between freedom and security. Citizens of the future live comfortable, orderly lives, but at the cost of tremendous individual freedom. People can no longer use offensive language, eat what they want, engage in ordinary physical relationships, or deviate from strict social customs. The government believes that by controlling behavior, it protects society from returning to the violence of previous generations. The film asks whether absolute safety is worth sacrificing personal liberty for. John Spartan immediately recognizes the problem, because he comes from a world where freedom brought both danger and vitality to civilization. Throughout the movie, Spartan repeatedly challenges the future's rigid rules, pushing the audience to consider what's lost when every risk is eliminated. At the opposite extreme stands Simon Phoenix. While Spartan values freedom, Phoenix represents freedom without any responsibility, rejecting structure entirely. This contrast is central to the film, presenting two extremes so the audience can see the flaws in both: a society that eliminates individuality and emotional depth on one side, and a man defined purely by uncontrolled violence on the other. Spartan ultimately becomes the balance between these two philosophies, standing for the necessity of order while rejecting excessive control, which makes him the film's moral center. Another major theme involves humanity's relationship with technology. Unlike many science fiction films that portray machines as inherently evil, Demolition Man presents technology as fundamentally neutral. Automated systems throughout the film perform countless everyday tasks: voice-controlled computers, sensors, machines that prepare food, vehicles that drive themselves, and law enforcement equipment that streamlines police work. While these inventions make life easier, they also reduce people's ability to solve problems independently, which becomes a real liability when Simon Phoenix arrives. The future police depend heavily on advanced technology, but it's instinct, courage, and practical knowledge that ultimately stop him. This theme feels especially relevant to modern audiences living in a world increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence, smartphones, automation, and digital assistants. Demolition Man reminds viewers that convenience should never come at the cost of the skills that make people adaptable and resilient. The film also explores the theme of cultural memory, imagining a future where classic music, films, literature, and shared cultural experiences have largely disappeared from everyday life. Lenina Huxley represents curiosity about the past, secretly studying 20th century culture and becoming fascinated by a world she never experienced. Her connection to Spartan exposes how much has been lost. Both Spartan and Phoenix are men out of time, and their friends, and the familiar culture they once knew, are essentially gone. Interestingly, they respond to this loss very differently. Spartan gradually accepts many aspects of the future while holding on to his core principles, adapting and evolving without abandoning who he is, while Phoenix simply treats the future as a new playground for destruction, never bothering to grow or change his identity. The film suggests that genuine strength comes not from resisting change, but from preserving one's moral core while adapting to new circumstances. Another recurring theme involves the idea that a perfect-looking society can still be flawed underneath. San Angeles appears flawless, citizens smile constantly, streets remain spotless, and open conflict seems impossible. But beneath that polished exterior lies corruption, social inequality, and an underground resistance movement operating against an increasingly authoritarian leadership. The film challenges the idea that a society can never be truly perfect by showing an underground community living beneath San Angeles. While people on the surface enjoy comfort, it's the people below who retain personal freedom, authentic relationships, and emotional honesty, suggesting that a comfortable existence doesn't necessarily equal genuine well-being. One of the most impressive achievements of Demolition Man is how it creates a believable vision of the future without leaning heavily on computer-generated visual effects. Unlike many science fiction films of its era that overwhelmed audiences with elaborate technology or CGI spectacle, Demolition Man adopts a more grounded visual philosophy. Its futuristic world feels realistic thanks to practical sets, careful production design, deliberate color palettes, and cinematography that prioritizes clarity over spectacle. More than 30 years after its release, many aspects of the film's visual presentation continue to hold up remarkably well. From its opening moments, the cinematography establishes two completely different worlds. The first act, set in Los Angeles in 1996, is filled with smoke-choked air, burning buildings, emergency vehicles, crowded streets, and flashing lights dominating nearly every frame. The camera frequently moves with urgency, following John Spartan as he charges into dangerous situations without hesitation. This visual language reflects the instability of the environment. A handheld camera work and rapid movement give the audience little opportunity to relax, while the constant sense of violence and grime reinforces a society at its breaking point. Lighting during these sequences relies heavily on strong contrasts. Bright flames illuminate dark interiors, police lights cast blue reflections across concrete surfaces, and shadows conceal danger inside abandoned structures. This gritty, high-contrast cinematography reflects the style that defined many action films of the era and immediately immerses audiences in this predictably chaotic world. After the story jumps to 2032, the visual identity of the film changes dramatically. The transition is deliberately jarring. Gone are the smoke and grime, replaced by wide streets, polished architecture, bright natural lighting, and clean public spaces, with every frame carefully organized. The future city of San Angeles feels open, spacious, and peaceful. This dramatic contrast serves an important storytelling purpose without requiring lengthy exposition. Audiences instantly understand how much civilization has changed simply through the cinematography. Director Marco Brambilla and cinematographer Alex Thompson shaped the futuristic sequences around smooth curves and geometric shapes. Interiors feature carefully arranged furniture, lighting, and decor that reflect the society's obsession with visual order, reinforcing one of the film's central themes: that the future eliminated disorder not just socially, but aesthetically. Everything is clean, efficient, and carefully regulated, which is beautiful to look at but also carries a quiet, unsettling undertone. Color plays a significant role in distinguishing the film's two eras. The 1996 sequences use saturated reds, deep blues, and gray tones to convey danger and physicality. Explosions produce vivid orange flames that dominate several action sequences, and the buildings and industrial environments create a rough visual texture. The future, by contrast, embraces a lighter color palette throughout nearly every location. Whites, pale blues, soft grays, and polished metallic surfaces dominate the screen, even extending to the more refined, understated police uniforms. This restrained palette reinforces the impression of a society built entirely around harmony and control, which makes Simon Phoenix's disruption of that controlled visual world even more striking. Wesley Snipes' colorful costumes, dramatic hairstyles, and bold accessories stand out immediately against the future's muted, orderly compositions, with Phoenix's vibrant energy visually clashing with everything around him. John Spartan occupies an interesting middle ground. His more grounded, practical costume design and presence draw visual attention without disrupting the film's compositions the way Phoenix does. Camera movement also changes significantly depending on which character is on screen. During sequences involving Spartan and Phoenix, the camera becomes far more dynamic. Tracking shots, quick cuts, and energetic crane movements emphasize a sense of physical momentum, and the action sequences rarely feel static because the cinematography actively participates in the movement. Conversely, scenes featuring everyday citizens of the future rely on slower dolly shots and more stable framing, making the arrival of violence feel all the more disruptive when it interrupts these calmer visual rhythms. The film's visual language shifts along with the story itself. The film's production designers made excellent use of real architecture rather than constructing every futuristic location entirely from scratch. Selecting existing buildings with modern designs allowed the future city to feel grounded. Glass facades, exposed structural components, and clean architectural lines gave the production a surprisingly advanced look for a film of its scale, and this approach let Demolition Man create a believable future through urban design choices that contributed meaningfully to the storytelling. Police headquarters, cryogenic prison facilities, restaurants, transportation systems, and residential interiors all share the same design principles, emphasizing clean lines, minimalism, and technological integration. Decorative elements remain subtle throughout, letting the architecture itself communicate the ideals of this future society. One particularly effective visual motif involves transparency. Glass walls, open interiors, large windows, and bright public spaces repeat throughout San Angeles, symbolically suggesting a society with nothing to hide. As the narrative progresses, though, audiences discover significant corruption exists beneath this openness, and that visual transparency becomes ironic, reinforcing the film's recurring theme that appearances can be deceiving. The futuristic sets avoid harsh shadows wherever possible, using soft illumination to create environments that feel comfortable, with every detail clearly visible. One of the most underrated aspects of Demolition Man is its exceptional use of music and sound. While audiences often remember the explosive action, futuristic setting, and memorable performances, the film's audio design plays a quietly major role in shaping the overall experience. Every explosion, gunshot, futuristic computer voice, musical cue, and moment of silence is carefully crafted to support the story rather than simply exist as background noise. The soundtrack and sound design actively help establish tone, build tension, and reinforce the film's themes about technology, civilization, and humanity. The film's musical score was composed by Elliot Goldenthal, a composer known for departing from conventional orchestral action movie music. Unlike many action composers who rely primarily on heroic, repetitive themes, Golden Dahl approached Demolition Man with a style that combined traditional orchestral writing with modern electronic textures. The result is a score that feels both powerful and futuristic without ever becoming cold or mechanical. Golden Dahl understood that Demolition Man wasn't simply an action movie, but also a comedy, a science fiction adventure, and a work of social satire. Because of this, the music constantly shifts between different emotional tones while maintaining a consistent musical identity. During action sequences, the orchestra becomes aggressive and energetic during moments exploring the futuristic society. Electronic sounds and softer orchestration create a sense of curiosity and technological wonder, and during comedic beats, the music often steps back, allowing dialogue and performances to generate the humor naturally. The opening sequence immediately establishes this musical philosophy. As the audience is introduced to the dangerous streets of Los Angeles in 1996, powerful orchestral themes accompany the chaotic visuals, with brass instruments dominating the soundtrack to create an atmosphere of urgency that reinforces the city's chaotic rhythm even before John Spartan appears on screen. The score also shapes Spartan's reputation. As the story unfolds, Golden Dahl's music consistently reflects his determination and relentless forward momentum, with the orchestra portraying him as nearly invincible, highlighting his courage and persistence and making every dangerous mission feel that much more intense. Simon Phoenix, by contrast, receives an entirely different musical treatment. Interestingly, the score avoids giving the villain a traditional sinister theme. Instead, Golden Dahl lets Phoenix's personality as brought to life by Wesley Snipes' energetic, unpredictable, theatrical performance speak for itself, using unusual rhythms, sharp accents, and jagged harmonies to mirror his chaotic mindset rather than announcing his presence with an obvious villain's theme. This restraint proves effective, letting audiences focus more on Snipes' performance, his voice, laughter, and physical movements, making the character even more memorable. Perhaps the most interesting musical transition occurs after the story jumps from 1996 to 2032. As the futuristic world of San Angeles is revealed, the score changes dramatically. The aggressive orchestral themes of the opening give way to smoother textures, with electronic sounds becoming increasingly prominent in sequences that symbolize the technological sophistication of the future. However, Golden Dahl avoids making the score sound overly synthetic. Traditional orchestral instruments remain central, reminding audiences that human emotion still exists beneath the surface of this futuristic civilization. One of the film's greatest strengths lies in knowing when not to use music at all. Many of the comedic moments involving John Spartan's confusion about the future contain very little background score, with the filmmakers instead relying on quiet moments, character reactions, and dialogue to generate humor naturally. The seashell scene provides an excellent example. Rather than telling the audience how to feel through music, the filmmakers let Spartan's confusion and an awkward silence create the comedy, making it far more effective than heavy musical accompaniment would have been. This deliberate use of silence means quieter moments carry just as much weight as the loud action sequences. Silence reinforces Spartan's isolation just as effectively as sound does elsewhere. Sound design plays an equally important role in building the futuristic setting. Every piece of technology has its own distinct audio identity. Doors slide open with clean mechanical precision. Computer systems respond with crisp, refined tones, and alarms and communication sounds all reflect subtle design choices that reinforce the impression that San Angeles values efficiency above all else. Nothing sounds chaotic. Every technological function operates smoothly, quietly, and predictably, with background noise carefully regulated throughout. This controlled soundscape contrasts sharply with the world of 1996, where early scenes are filled with police sirens, shouting crowds, explosions, gunfire, breaking glass, crashing vehicles, and burning buildings. The audio environment constantly bombards the audience, reflecting the disorder of the city itself. Demolition Man was released in October 1993 amid high expectations. The film featured two of Hollywood's biggest action stars, Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes, alongside Sandra Bullock, all backed by a substantial production budget and an ambitious science fiction concept. Throughout the 1990s, audiences were accustomed to large-scale action spectacles, and many expected Demolition Man to follow the familiar formula of explosive chases, spectacular fights, and memorable one-liners. The film certainly delivered on those fronts, but its combination of satire, comedy, futuristic world-building, and social commentary surprised critics and audiences alike, leading to a reception that was more layered than expected. From a commercial standpoint, the film was a solid success. With a budget estimated at around $57 million, Demolition Man became one of the more successful entries in Warner Bros.' growing lineup of blockbuster action films. Its strong box office performance confirmed that audiences still turned out for Stallone as a major action draw, while also proving that science fiction concepts could succeed in the mainstream when combined with recognizable stars. The film performed especially well in North America, benefiting from Stallone's enormous popularity throughout the 1980s and into the early 90s. One of the defining figures of action cinema thanks to the Rocky and Rambo franchises, along with successful standalone films like Cobra, Tango Cash, Cliffhanger, and Lock Up. Many fans went into theaters expecting a straightforward Stallone action vehicle and generally responded positively, even though the film's balance of science fiction, elaborate futuristic setting, and emotional storytelling set it apart from other action films of the period. One of the aspects most consistently praised by audiences was the chemistry between the two lead performers. Sylvester Stallone's portrayal of John Spartan delivered the dependable heroism audiences expected, but also displayed stronger comedic timing than many of his earlier films, letting the fish-out-of-water premise generate genuine laughs while keeping Stallone's tough guy screen persona intact and credible. Wesley Snipes received especially enthusiastic praise for his performance as Simon Phoenix, with many critics considering it the film's greatest asset. Rather than playing a cold, calculating criminal, Snipes created a character bursting with energy, charisma, and unpredictability, often stealing scenes from Stallone not because of any lack of presence on Stallone's part, but because Phoenix was simply that entertaining. Snipes' performance elevated the character well beyond the typical movie villain, giving audiences someone who felt genuinely dangerous while still remaining strangely likable. Sandra Bullock, despite not yet being a major star in 1993, received considerable praise as well. Many reviews highlighted her natural charm, enthusiasm, and excellent comedic chemistry with Stallone, elevating her beyond a traditional supporting role. Looking back, many consider Demolition Man an important stepping stone in Bullock's career. Just 1 year before Speed transformed her into an international star, this film gave audiences an early glimpse of the charisma that would soon make her one of the industry's most successful leading actresses. Critical reception was more divided. While many reviewers praised the performances, action sequences, and imaginative world-building, some critics questioned the film's overall tonal balance, struggling with its mixture of satire, comedy, science fiction, and traditional action, and finding its quick shifts in tone made it difficult to pin down exactly what kind of story it was trying to tell. Interestingly, this criticism became one of the qualities fans came to appreciate most. While some reviewers in 1993 viewed the tonal inconsistency as a flaw, modern audiences now frequently celebrate Demolition Man precisely because it refuses to be confined to a single genre. The screenplay generated particularly mixed reviews. Supporters praised its surprisingly thoughtful social commentary beneath the action, admiring how the script explores censorship, technological dependence, political correctness, corporate influence, and personal freedom without becoming overly serious. For some critics, this gave the film an unexpected layer of substance. Others simply found the concepts imaginative and memorable, regardless of how seriously they were meant to be taken. The visual presentation received consistently positive feedback. Critics admired the production design, futuristic architecture, practical effects, and believable vision of San Angeles. Unlike many science fiction films that overwhelm audiences with elaborate, obviously artificial technology, Demolition Man built its future using real, modern world architecture rather than constructing entirely artificial environments, which reviewers found refreshingly grounded and plausible. The action sequences also received largely favorable responses. The fight choreography, practical explosions, vehicle stunts, and large-scale set pieces demonstrated real craftsmanship, and audiences found them convincingly staged. Opinions on the performances were more divided on some points. A few critics found the fish-out-of-water setup involving Spartans' confusion about future customs and technology occasionally felt overplayed, but several comedic moments, particularly the seashell mystery and the automated verbal fine system, quickly became audience favorites. Very few action films from the early 1990s have achieved the kind of lasting legacy Demolition Man now enjoys. While many blockbusters from that era were commercially successful during their theatrical runs but faded from cultural relevance afterward, this science fiction action film gradually evolved into one of the most respected cult classics of its generation. More than 30 years after its release, it continues to attract new audiences, inspire discussions about society, influence filmmakers, and maintain a remarkable presence in popular culture. One of the main reasons for the film's growing relevance is that when audiences first watched Demolition Man in 1993, many viewed its vision of the future as exaggerated and designed primarily for entertainment. The idea of a society obsessed with political correctness, automated technology, corporate dominance, surveillance, and behavioral regulation seemed amusing and unrealistic to most viewers at the time. Decades later, though, many of the film's core ideas have become genuine topics of public discussion. Free speech, online moderation, surveillance technology, facial recognition, artificial intelligence, digital payments, health regulations, corporate influence, and social conformity have all become increasingly relevant concerns. While Demolition Man never predicted these developments with complete accuracy, its surprisingly insightful commentary transformed the film from simple nostalgic entertainment into something audiences now revisit specifically to compare against contemporary life. Every few years, new articles, videos, podcasts, and online discussions examine how many aspects of the film resemble real-world developments, and this continuous rediscovery keeps the movie culturally alive long after many of its contemporaries have faded from public attention. Another major contributor to the film's legacy is its unique ability to successfully blend multiple genres. Many action movies from the early 1990s focused almost entirely on explosions, gunfights, and physical spectacle. Demolition Man certainly delivered plenty of that, but it also incorporated comedy, science fiction, satire, romance, mystery, and philosophical questions without letting any single element overwhelm the others. This balance influenced later filmmakers, who recognized that action movie audiences were capable of embracing more than non-stop violence. Many films in subsequent decades increasingly combined humor with large-scale action, creating protagonists who were both physically formidable and genuinely funny. While Demolition Man wasn't the first film to attempt this combination, it demonstrated that different tones could coexist successfully within a mainstream blockbuster. John Spartan also became one of Sylvester Stallone's most beloved characters. Throughout his career, Stallone created several legendary action heroes, including Rocky Balboa and John Rambo. But Spartan stands apart because he lets Stallone display vulnerability, confusion, curiosity, and excellent comedic timing alongside his usual physical prowess. His struggle to understand future society makes him relatable despite his extraordinary physical abilities, and many fans consider Spartan one of Stallone's most well-rounded protagonists, combining traditional action hero qualities with genuine personality. Wesley Snipes' portrayal of Simon Phoenix left an equally powerful legacy. Movie villains risk becoming forgettable if they rely solely on violence or intimidation, but Phoenix avoids this problem through his theatrical energy, unpredictable behavior, infectious laughter, and complete disregard for social rules, making him one of the most memorable antagonists of the 1990s. Numerous later villains adopted similar characteristics, blending charm, humor, intelligence, and danger rather than portraying simple, one-dimensional evil. Simon Phoenix demonstrated that audiences often remember charismatic villains just as vividly as their heroic counterparts, and his influence can be seen in many later action and comic book films where antagonists were given much more personality. Looking back, Demolition Man is frequently recognized as one of the first major films to showcase the qualities that would eventually make Sandra Bullock one of the biggest stars of her generation. Her performance as Lena Huxley revealed natural charm, comic timing, emotional warmth, and the ability to balance intelligence with humor, qualities that would define much of her later career in films like Speed, While You Were Sleeping, Miss Congeniality, The Proposal, Gravity, and The Blind Side. Audiences who return to Demolition Man with this context in mind often see her supporting performance as an important early milestone in a remarkable career. Another element of the movie that's taken on a cultural life of its own is the mystery of the three seashells, whose intended function was never explained. A simple visual joke about future bathroom technology that became one of cinema's most famously unresolved mysteries. Fans have proposed countless theories for decades across internet forums, interviews, conventions, podcasts, and social media discussions. The three seashells have been referenced in television shows, comic books, novelty products, internet memes, video games, and countless articles celebrating them as one of cinema's greatest ongoing mysteries. A very few fictional objects have achieved this kind of widespread recognition despite lacking any official explanation. Another lasting contribution involves the fictional franchise wars, which left Taco Bell as the only surviving restaurant concept. One of the film's jokes that's aged in an unexpectedly ironic way as real-world global corporations have continued consolidating and expanding throughout the 21st century, leading audiences to increasingly view the satire as perceptive rather than simply absurd. The film's influence also extends into broader discussions about science fiction as a genre. Unlike many futuristic stories that focus on alien invasions, interstellar travel, or advanced robotics, Demolition Man imagines how ordinary activities, speaking, driving, shopping, policing, and personal relationships might evolve over time. This focus on social behavior rather than technological spectacle earned it appreciation from science fiction fans who value speculative storytelling grounded in recognizable human experience. One of the most fascinating aspects of Demolition Man has been how interpretations of the film have shifted over time. When it first premiered in 1993, most audiences saw it primarily as an entertaining science fiction action movie starring two of the era's biggest action stars. It delivered spectacular explosions, memorable fight scenes, futuristic gadgets, humorous dialogue, and charismatic performances, making for an enjoyable night at the cinema for anyone looking for blockbuster entertainment. Over time, though, audiences have increasingly come to see it as something more, a film that quietly predicted important aspects of modern life. This shift in interpretation is one of the primary reasons Demolition Man has remained culturally relevant for more than 30 years. For audiences in the early 1990s, The future depicted in the film seemed deliberately absurd. The idea of citizens receiving automatic fines for using offensive language felt like pure comedic exaggeration, and the notion of physical intimacy being replaced by virtual experiences seemed nearly impossible. A world where every restaurant belonged to the same corporation felt like a minor, playful exaggeration, because it still felt distant from reality at the time. The comedy worked because the filmmakers were satirizing broader social trends, contrasting John Spartan's straightforward personality against an overly regulated civilization. As many audience members have revisited the film with fresh eyes, though, advances in technology and changes in public behavior had given these once absurd predictions new meaning. The verbal fines system now reminds viewers of real discussions surrounding acceptable speech. Automated technology, voice assistants, smart devices, and biometric and facial recognition systems in smartphones make the film's futuristic concepts feel eerily familiar, especially as governments and organizations continue to expand their use of these technologies. Many viewers have expressed surprise at how well certain aspects of the movie hold up, engaging with it thoughtfully rather than simply laughing at its futuristic concepts. Audiences have gradually reframed Demolition Man from purely nostalgic entertainment into a film frequently referenced in discussions about modern society, with different generations interpreting the story according to their own experiences. Viewers who watched the movie during its original theatrical release tend to remember it as a refreshing combination of action and comedy released during an era dominated by more straightforward action films. For them, John Spartan represented the classic action movie protagonist, while Simon Phoenix stood out as one of the decade's most entertaining villains. Many members of this generation still connect with the film because it captures the spirit of 1990s blockbuster filmmaking. Practical explosions, elaborate stunt work, charismatic movie stars, and memorable dialogue represent an era before computer-generated spectacle became the dominant form of action cinema, and watching the film today brings a certain nostalgia for a period when physical, practical performances were central to large-scale Hollywood productions. Younger audiences, on the other hand, frequently approach the film from an entirely different perspective. Many first encounter Demolition Man through streaming services without the context of its original theatrical release, and they often focus more heavily on its social commentary, since the futuristic elements feel more directly relevant to their own experiences with modern technology. For them, the film's exploration of privacy, surveillance, artificial intelligence, digital dependence, public behavior, and personal freedom feels significant to modern life, and it's this generational difference that represents one of the film's greatest strengths, offering different kinds of enjoyment depending on the audience. Older viewers appreciate it as a piece of nostalgic action filmmaking, while younger viewers admire its unexpectedly relevant ideas. John Spartan himself has become especially relatable, since his story revolves around adapting to a world that no longer feels familiar. Many viewers connect with these moments on a deeply human level, particularly when society changes faster than expected. Technology evolves, customs shift, language transforms, and cultural expectations develop over time. Spartan's confusion resonates because it mirrors how audiences often feel when confronted with rapidly shifting technology or social norms. Rather than rejecting the future outright, Spartan gradually embraces the aspects of it that genuinely deserve acceptance while still holding on to healthy criticism of the rest. And many viewers interpret this as a reminder that adaptation doesn't require abandoning one's principles. Simon Phoenix generates an equally interesting kind of audience reaction. Despite being dangerous and unpredictable, many viewers find him enormously entertaining. Wesley Snipes infuses the character with charisma, humor, and energy that audiences genuinely enjoy watching, even as he wreaks havoc. This reaction defies the traditional sense of what a villain should be. Rather than relying on menace and predictability, Phoenix's popularity grows from his unpredictable performance, where small expressions and unexpected moments reward close attention. Lenina Huxley also receives especially positive responses from audiences revisiting the movie today. Sandra Bullock's performance combines optimism, intelligence, humor, and genuine compassion in a way that modern viewers frequently recognize as balancing comedy with emotional sincerity, particularly considering that this role came before she became an international superstar. One of the greatest strengths of Demolition Man is that its characters are far more complex than they might appear at first glance. The film could easily have followed a familiar action movie formula: a heroic police officer pursuing a dangerous criminal through a futuristic city, but beneath the explosive surface, the story centers on personal growth, ideological conflict, and adaptation. Nearly every major character undergoes some form of transformation, driven by shifting motivations and the challenges posed by the society around them. These character arcs provide the emotional foundation that elevates Demolition Man beyond a conventional science fiction action film. At the story's center is John Spartan, whose introduction as the Demolition Man establishes him as a police officer famous for completing impossible missions, regardless of the destruction left behind. His confidence, determination, and physical courage make him one of the best officers on the force. But his single-minded focus on capturing Simon Phoenix, believing that success justifies collateral damage, reflects a violent world where society expects immediate results and Spartan delivers without hesitation. When he's blamed for the deaths of hostages during that operation, he's forced to confront the reality that good intentions don't guarantee good outcomes. Once he's revived decades later, Spartan faces an entirely new kind of challenge. His friends are gone, his family connections have faded into history, and even the recognizable customs, language, technology, and social values of his own era have changed beyond anything he imagined. This situation creates one of the film's most compelling character journeys. Rather than simply fighting Simon Phoenix, Spartan must rediscover his own identity in a world where his old sense of self no longer fits. He initially responds with frustration, confusion, and disbelief, finding the rules of San Angeles ridiculous, which fuels many of the film's funniest moments. Over time, though, Spartan demonstrates remarkable emotional flexibility. While he criticizes many aspects of future society, he doesn't reject everything automatically, instead coming to understand unfamiliar customs and develop respect for people from a different world. This willingness to adapt sets him apart from many traditional action heroes, who typically resist change. Spartan's greatest transformation occurs in his understanding of balance. By the film's conclusion, he recognizes that neither the violent past nor San Angeles is controlled. Idealized future represents the right way forward, and instead comes to value combining freedom with responsibility, and progress with common sense. In other words, real progress means carrying forward valuable lessons from the past while embracing the positive aspects of the future. Simon Phoenix follows a very different path. Unlike Spartan, Phoenix experiences almost no internal transformation throughout the story. He remains manipulative and unpredictable from beginning to end. At first glance, this lack of development might seem to make Phoenix a simpler character, but in reality, his consistency serves an important narrative purpose. Phoenix represents a kind of static, self-serving chaos, and through Wesley Snipes' expressive performance, he continually reveals new layers of personality while maintaining his destructive core. Even when futuristic technology gives Phoenix new abilities that help him survive and adapt tactically, his complete lack of empathy prevents any genuine personal growth. Everyone around him becomes an obstacle, making meaningful relationships impossible. In this sense, Phoenix's defeat isn't just a physical victory for Spartan, but also a psychological one. proving that raw destructive obsession is ultimately no match for a character capable of real emotional growth. Lenina Huxley is one of the story's most interesting arcs. At the film's beginning, she represents the ideal citizen of San Angeles, intelligent, enthusiastic, optimistic, and deeply respectful of authority, yet secretly curious about the more dangerous, forbidden aspects of 20th century culture, which she studies and admires from a distance. Meeting John Spartan transforms this curiosity into genuine personal growth. Spartan directly challenges her assumptions, encouraging her to think independently rather than blindly follow the rules she's been raised with, and she responds with real, thoughtful reflection rather than simple imitation. By the end of the film, she hasn't abandoned her belief in civilization and progress, but she does develop a more balanced understanding of humanity, continuing to value order while also embracing courage, individuality, and emotional honesty. This connection with Spartan benefits both of them. He gains a genuine ally in a strange new world, while she gains the optimism and openness that come from embracing rather than fearing that world. One of the most impressive aspects of Demolition Man is how much storytelling is accomplished through costume and set design alone. Simply by observing what people wear and how they live, the audience can understand the differences between the old world and the new. Every uniform, building, vehicle, and prop is carefully designed to communicate ideas about culture, technology, social values, and personal identity, rather than existing as simple decoration. This visual design becomes an essential part of the narrative, helping transform Demolition Man into more than just a typical 1990s science fiction film. The movie presents two completely different civilizations separated by decades, and its production design reflects both worlds through distinct visual languages. The Los Angeles of 1996 is overcrowded, noisy, and visibly scarred by years of crime and violence. Worn, industrial-looking buildings dominate the skyline, and cluttered streets immediately establish the kind of world Spartan comes from: dangerous, unpredictable, and physically demanding. The film leans into gritty realism here, with cracked concrete, exposed steel, broken windows, graffiti, smoke, and fire standing in stark contrast to the futuristic fantasy that comes later. This grounded, recognizable urban decay makes Spartan's world believable despite the film's heightened action. When the story jumps to 2032, the transformation is immediate. The city of San Angeles appears almost impossibly clean. Streets are wide and spotless, buildings feature elegant curves instead of sharp industrial lines, and public spaces incorporate greenery, polished surfaces, and carefully maintained architecture. The contrast between these two worlds communicates decades of social evolution before a single line of dialogue is even spoken. One of the smartest production decisions involved using existing modern architecture instead of constructing entirely new futuristic buildings from scratch. Many of the real locations already had sleek designs that felt naturally futuristic, with glass, sweeping curves, reflective materials, and minimalist structures, creating a convincing sense of a contemporary future grounded in real design principles rather than pure science fiction fantasy. This approach has helped the film's futuristic aesthetic age remarkably well. Many other futuristic films eventually feel dated as visual trends shift, but Demolition Man largely avoided that problem by building its future out of real, modernist architecture. The interiors of San Angeles reflect this same philosophy. Government buildings, police headquarters, restaurants, homes, and public transportation all favor order, clean lines, and efficiency, with furniture that emphasizes function over personal expression and minimal decoration throughout. Rooms and public spaces are designed to feel comfortable without encouraging individuality, subtly reinforcing the story's themes about conformity. John Spartan's costume reinforces his identity immediately. Unlike the polished appearance of future citizens, Spartan dresses in rugged, practical clothing designed for survival. Heavy boots, durable fabrics, and functional equipment reflect a background built around operating in dangerous conditions. In the future, his clothing continues to stand out through its visible texture, making him look physically grounded in contrast to the cleaner, lighter costumes worn by everyone around him. This visual difference tells audiences where Spartan belongs even before he speaks. His original police uniform, seen in the opening sequences, similarly emphasizes mobility and protection over ceremony. Sturdy materials and functional accessories communicate his readiness for dangerous situations, reflecting a society where confronting violent criminals is part of everyday police work. Future police uniforms present an entirely different philosophy. Officers wear streamlined outfits that emphasize professionalism rather than combat readiness, with clean lines, bright colors, and lightweight materials reflecting a confidence that technology has replaced the need for brute force. These uniforms are almost ceremonial, since genuine violence has become so rare, which makes their contrast with Simon Phoenix especially meaningful once he begins terrorizing the future. Their outfits quickly come to symbolize a society that has essentially forgotten the reality of physical conflict. They look impressive, but offer little real preparation for confronting someone like Phoenix. Simon Phoenix's wardrobe represents one of the film's boldest costume choices. Wesley Snipes wears colorful, expressive clothing that perfectly reflects his personality. Bright colors, dramatic styling, and unusual accessories set him apart visually from Spartan's practical appearance. Phoenix dresses almost like a performer who enjoys the attention he generates, and his costumes celebrate individuality, excess, and unpredictability, with every outfit reinforcing his complete rejection of conformity. Even in this tightly controlled future, it's impossible to ignore him. Dressing Phoenix in eye-catching clothing rather than dark uniforms or intimidating armor communicates confidence and theatricality, a creative decision that makes him feel more like a showman, contrasting sharply with the sheer violence of his behavior. Lenina Huxley's costumes offer another fascinating example of visual storytelling. As a member of the future's police force, her uniform reflects the ideals of San Angeles. It's clean, efficient, and carefully standardized, while still remaining somewhat approachable in its design, communicating intelligence, professionalism, and optimism rather than physical authority. As her relationship with Spartan develops, subtle shifts in her presentation become more important than any dramatic costume change. Her outfit remains a consistent bridge between future civilization and traditional humanity, since her expressive personality never lets her costume completely define who she is. Unlike many other citizens of the future, one of the defining reasons Demolition Man has remained popular for decades is the quality of its screenplay. While many action films from the early 1990s relied primarily on explosions and spectacle, Demolition Man distinguishes itself through sharp dialogue, memorable character interactions, and a script that constantly balances humor, action, suspense, and social commentary. The screenplay succeeds because nearly every conversation serves multiple purposes at once: revealing character, advancing the plot, exploring the film's themes, and entertaining the audience, often within the same exchange. The writers made sure that futuristic dialogue never sounds like generic exposition. Instead, each character speaks in a way that reflects their personality so clearly that audiences can often identify who's speaking without even seeing the screen. John Spartan speaks with confidence, simplicity, and directness. His dialogue relies on short, forward-moving sentences rather than dramatic speeches, immediately establishing him as a man from a different era. When confronted with futuristic customs and rules he doesn't understand, Spartan doesn't offer long-winded explanations. His confusion feels genuine, and much of the film's comedy comes from his inability to understand the society around him. Rather than delivering carefully constructed jokes, He often generates laughs simply by asking blunt, logical questions about unfamiliar future customs, which makes his responses feel completely natural. This makes Spartan relatable and gives audiences a voice inside the story that reflects their own likely reactions. Simon Phoenix provides the complete opposite kind of dialogue. Wesley Snipes delivers nearly every line with energy, confidence, and unpredictability, constantly shifting between humor, intimidation, mockery, and genuine menace, often within the same conversation. His dialogue rarely follows a predictable pattern, making him impossible to anticipate the way many other movie villains are. His conversations feel like verbal games, layered with performance in every line. One of Phoenix's most memorable qualities is that his dialogue reveals his personality far more effectively than any exposition could, letting audiences experience his unstable nature directly rather than simply being told about it. Through the sheer unpredictability of his speech, the verbal exchanges between Spartan and Phoenix form the emotional center of the screenplay. Their conversations feel like two opposing philosophies colliding rather than simply characters exchanging lines. A Spartan values responsibility, discipline, and justice, while Phoenix embraces freedom without consequence, creating a natural verbal and philosophical conflict throughout the film. Even during action sequences, their exchanges continue exploring the differences between responsibility and selfishness, civilization and pure survival, giving the physical conflict between them added emotional weight through this engaging verbal tension. Lenina Huxley introduces a completely different style of communication. Sandra Bullock portrays her with enthusiasm, optimism, curiosity, and intelligence, often speaking quickly, asking questions, and expressing excitement about 20th century history. Her dialogue reflects someone raised in a peaceful society who genuinely believes humanity has solved most of its problems. Her early conversations with Spartan blend cultural misunderstandings with complete sincerity, and while Spartan often responds with disbelief, the humor in these scenes comes from neither character intending to be funny, they're simply viewing the world from truly different perspectives. As the story progresses, though, their dialogue gradually evolves, shedding assumptions and allowing their relationship to develop naturally without becoming overly sentimental. The screenplay also deserves particular praise for how it handles exposition. Many science fiction films struggle to explain unfamiliar worlds without slowing down the narrative, but Demolition Man largely avoids this problem. John Spartan's confusion becomes the perfect storytelling device for delivering exposition naturally, since his questions feel like genuine conversation rather than direct explanation, preventing the audience from feeling overwhelmed with information. Importantly, most of the film's comedy emerges from character and situation rather than one-liners alone. A Spartan's frustration and Huxley's enthusiasm naturally combine to create comedy. The seashell running gag represents one of the screenplay's smartest recurring jokes. Along with the automated fine system, every time Spartan uses offensive language, an automated system immediately issues a fine, and this repetition strengthens the humor because audiences come to anticipate Spartan's increasingly frustrated reactions. Just as memorable is how the seashell mystery is left completely unresolved rather than explained, a decision that became one of the film's most celebrated comedic choices in hindsight. Another strength of the screenplay lies in its pacing. Conversations rarely run longer than necessary, and nearly every scene alternates between moments of world-building and forward narrative momentum, creating a rhythm that prevents the film from ever feeling monotonous. Nearly every dialogue sequence either advances the story or explores its themes without interrupting the film's overall momentum. When Demolition Man was released in 1993, it was entering a new era of blockbuster marketing. Studios had begun recognizing that major action films needed global, international advertising campaigns, television appearances, merchandise, and extensive media coverage, and Warner Brothers treated Demolition Man as one of its biggest releases of the year. understanding that the combination of Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, and an ambitious science fiction setting had the potential to attract audiences around the world. The marketing campaign successfully emphasized explosive entertainment while carefully introducing audiences to the film's unique futuristic world, without revealing too many of its biggest surprises. The first and most obvious marketing advantage was the presence of Sylvester Stallone. By 1993, Stallone had spent nearly 2 decades establishing himself as one of the world's biggest action stars. The Rocky and Rambo franchises had made him an international icon, while films like Cobra, Tango Cash, Cliffhanger, and Lock Up reinforced his reputation for delivering exciting, dependable action entertainment. Simply putting Stallone's name prominently on posters and trailers immediately signaled to millions of moviegoers that this was a blockbuster action film. The marketing campaign leaned heavily into this reputation, with early advertisements highlighting John Spartan as a classic Stallone hero while gradually introducing the futuristic setting that distinguished Demolition Man from his previous films, presenting the movie's science fiction elements as an addition to, rather than a replacement for, straightforward action. Wesley Snipes represented another important marketing asset. By this point in his career, thanks to films like New Jack City, Passenger 57, and Rising Sun, Snipes had already established himself as one of the most exciting rising performers in Hollywood, known for his versatility and growing popularity. Promotional material positioned Simon Phoenix as a villain capable of matching Stallone both physically and dramatically, with trailers highlighting Phoenix's unpredictable, larger-than-life personality to generate audience interest. At the time of the film's release, Sandra Bullock was only 1 year away from Speed, and compared to her 2 co-stars, the marketing campaign naturally focused less on her and more on establishing the 2 action leads. Looking back, many of the film's promotional posters and trailers featured Bullock less prominently, simply because audiences didn't yet recognize her as one of the industry's future biggest stars. The theatrical posters became some of the film's most recognizable promotional images. Most versions featured Stallone and Snipes facing opposite directions against dramatic futuristic lighting, with a simple composition that immediately communicated the central conflict between the 2 characters while emphasizing the film's science fiction setting. Metallic colors, blue lighting, and sleek visual design reinforced the futuristic atmosphere, and metallic-style lettering in the title reflected the polished, futuristic world of San Angeles rather than the gritty textures typically associated with action films of the era. Several international markets received alternate poster designs, but nearly all of them share the same central image: the confrontation between Spartan and Phoenix surrounded by futuristic imagery, giving the film a consistent, strong visual identity that audiences could instantly recognize regardless of where the film was released. The theatrical trailers proved especially effective at introducing the film's central science fiction concept while still generating curiosity about the plot without spoiling major twists. The trailers distinguished themselves from many contemporary action films by including quick cuts featuring Spartan's confusion about future customs, Phoenix's chaotic behavior, and Huxley's fascination with 20th century culture, demonstrating that Demolition Man offered more than just explosions and gunfights. This lighter tone helped broaden the film's appeal beyond traditional action fans. Television advertising also played a major role in the promotional campaign. In the early 1990s, television remained one of the most powerful marketing tools available, and short commercials aired frequently during sporting events, primetime programming, and popular entertainment broadcasts. These advertisements condensed the movie into rapid sequences of explosions, futuristic vehicles, dramatic confrontations, and memorable one-liners, designed to capture attention immediately. with many commercials emphasizing the Stallone versus Snipes dynamic as a key selling point. Print advertising also contributed significantly to the film's visibility. Movie magazines, entertainment publications, newspapers, and comic books featured advertisements showcasing production stills and behind-the-scenes photos. Science fiction magazines paid particular attention to the futuristic technology and world building, while mainstream entertainment magazines focused more heavily on the cast and action sequences. The cast also participated extensively in promotional efforts leading up to the film's release. Sylvester Stallone gave numerous television interviews discussing the challenges of combining action with comedy and science fiction, while Wesley Snipes spoke enthusiastically about creating Simon Phoenix, explaining how much creative freedom he was given in developing the character's energetic personality. Sandra Bullock also participated in interviews around this time, though her involvement was smaller given her status at that point in her career. Entertainment programs frequently aired behind-the-scenes footage, showcasing the production's large-scale explosions, futuristic sets, and elaborate action choreography, and these promotional segments helped position Demolition Man as a film with the spectacular production value expected of a major Hollywood blockbuster. International marketing adapted slightly depending on regional audiences, though the central promotional strategy remained largely consistent. Certain references were changed to improve recognition in different markets, the most famous example being the Taco Bell reference, since that restaurant chain lacked the widespread international recognition it had in the United States, leading several countries to see Pizza Hut used instead. Demolition Man occupies a unique position in science fiction and action cinema. Rather than simply following formulas established by previous futuristic action movies, it borrowed familiar elements from earlier films while introducing its own distinctive perspective through satire, humor, and social commentary, resulting in a movie that feels surprisingly original when compared with films that came both before and after it. Perhaps the most obvious comparison is with Blade Runner. Both films imagine a future society shaped by technological advancement and dramatic social change, but the tone of each movie is completely different. Blade Runner presents a dark, rain-soaked future filled with towering skyscrapers, oppressive environments, and moral ambiguity, with a world that feels crowded and emotionally heavy. Demolition Man, by contrast, presents a future that's bright, clean, and almost utopian. Streets are spotless, buildings are elegant, and violence has virtually disappeared. Despite these visual differences, both films share similar underlying questions about how civilization evolves. Blade Runner explores the nature of human identity and artificial life, while Demolition Man explores individuality, morality, and personal freedom, one using darkness to express its concerns, the other hiding its concerns beneath polished perfection. A comparison with RoboCop is also worth exploring, as both films involve police officers confronting corrupt systems while examining the relationship between law enforcement, technology, and corporate power, emphasizing the effects of commercialization and mechanization as future corporations dominate public institutions. Demolition Man shares some of RoboCop's cynicism about institutional power, though it focuses less on physical transformation and more on cultural transformation. A Spartan remains fully human throughout, while the story around him examines how a society struggles to preserve genuine humanity when institutions, rather than individuals, are in control. Another obvious comparison is Total Recall, a film starring Sylvester Stallone's fellow action star Arnold Schwarzenegger in a futuristic action-adventure released just a few years earlier. Total Recall embraces psychological mystery, political revolution, and large-scale science fiction concepts involving memory and identity, while Demolition Man takes a more grounded approach, focusing on everyday social behavior rather than complex questions about the nature of reality itself. Because San Angeles feels like a place audiences could imagine actually living in, its satire resonates more directly than Total Recall's more abstract science fiction concepts. Judge Dredd offers another fascinating comparison, since both films star Sylvester Stallone and depict futuristic law enforcement, feature stylized cities, advanced technology, and authoritarian governments. However, the two films diverge significantly in tone. Judge Dredd embraces a comic book-inspired, exaggerated visual style, while Demolition Man remains comparatively restrained, with humor that emerges naturally from character and world building rather than visual excess. Many fans consider Demolition Man the stronger film precisely because it feels more grounded rather than tied to specific visual trends of its era. The relationship between Demolition Man and The Fifth Element is similarly interesting, as both films combine action, comedy, science fiction, and colorful world building, yet The Fifth Element embraces eccentricity, visual excess, and imaginative fantasy, while Demolition Man adopts a cleaner, more realistic aesthetic. Both movies succeed because they refuse to take themselves too seriously, but Demolition Man grounds its humor in social observation, whereas The Fifth Element leans more into pure visual spectacle, demonstrating that science fiction can be entertaining while still exploring meaningful ideas in very different ways. Another important comparison involves Escape from New York, John Carpenter's classic film. Snake Plissken represents the ultimate anti-hero navigating a dangerous, lawless society, and John Spartan shares some similarities as an outsider forced to navigate an unfamiliar world. Both films center a fish-out-of-water protagonist confronting a system they don't fully belong to, though their circumstances and tones differ considerably. Finally, comparisons to Back to the Future highlight a very different kind of story. Even though both films involve a protagonist transported into an unfamiliar period and forced to navigate cultural differences and personal growth, Marty McFly struggles with the past, while John Spartan struggles to understand the future, but both stories ultimately explore what it means to adapt without abandoning one's core identity, demonstrating just how effective the fish-out-of-water concept remains across multiple genres.